Ready?
Ready, aim, fire.
Okay. All right, we are back from lunch for our budget session for Human Services, and next up is Veterans Service Agency. And could you please introduce or read?
Which one is that?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Dan?
I'm Greg Carlson. I'm the Director of Veteran Services for the county. I've been in my position since 2016, so working on a decade now. There's 5 people total in the Veteran Service Agency. We have two service officers, one in Jamestown, one in Dunkirk, an administrative aide who's in Jamestown, and then myself. And then Cindy Reedy is the PFC Dwyer Grant Program Coordinator, but her position is funded by a annually recurring grant. Our FTE has not changed in years. Our budget is relatively small compared to everyone else, and our costs are generally fixed with very minor variances, all based upon contractual changes. So step increment increases, the only difference in the budget coming this year that's not just a contractual increase is the veterans van is getting older, so the maintenance is getting more expensive. So there's a slight increase for maintenance. However, we budgeted for the veterans van for 2025, but there's a possibility the veterans van will not make it through 2025 just because it's aging out, and it would cost $200,000 to replace, which we don't have. So. And the usership on the veterans van is so low now compared to what it was 20 years ago. So it's just, it wouldn't be practical to even try to replace it if we had the money to do so.
What are you gonna do instead?
The veterans van is something that very few counties even had. It's something that we were able to do for years based on a grant. You know, that grant is no longer there. So the riders that are there will have to find alternate transportation. Most of them are disabled veterans, so they get paid mileage.
Okay.
So they could, even if they can't drive themselves, then somebody who would be willing to take them could get paid mileage, so. And most of the guys who are using the van now, like if you look at the schedule, it's the same 2 or 3 guys that go over and over again.
Yeah.
And we do have some alternative ways of getting onesies and twosies. So if you had an elderly person who had to get to the Buffalo VA, we have other ways to arrange for that individual person to get a ride that doesn't cost the government $200,000 for a new van plus a driver at $20,000 a year plus maintenance for the same 2 people to ride.
So you think
Volunteer.
there won't be, you'll be able to take up the slack?
Yeah, yes, correct. But that would be the only difference in the budget is it's gonna increase a little bit because the van is getting old, but there's a possibility that the van doesn't make it through the year. So essentially, we're keeping it right, talk to Carts, they're keeping the veterans van running until we get that, hey, this is a $10,000 fix to make it go another 500 miles. And we're getting close, so.
How,
What's that?
What year is the van?
2016. So, and it's got several 100,000 miles out at this point.
Wow.
Any questions?
any questions? Okay. I think that's good.
Am I dismissed? All right.
You are dismissed.
You're good, thank you.
Get
You
back
guys
to
are
work.
tough. I think I'd get out of here. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, everybody.
had a good lunch.
Osmond's Pizza. Okay. Now we have the Office for Aging Services. If you could please introduce yourselves.
Let me know if you all can hear me. I'm a new face. I'm Dana Corwin. I'm the interim director since Marianne has retired. So I'll be helping you walk through the budget with the expertise on either side of me. Just a little background. I've been with the agency for now 16 years. So I'm happy to be here, and I have presented the budget one time, many, many years ago. And it was memorable to me because I talked your ears off. So this time I have some fiscal power on either side, so we're happy to walk you through.
I'm Diana Songer, Deputy Director of Finance for Human Services.
Hello, as many of you may know, Steve Dando. I am the grant coordinator. I just started with Office for Aging Services back in April, so yeah, a couple of new faces up here for you guys to look at and listen to, and hopefully we do a pretty good job with this. Just as a quick overview, as you know, Marianne Spanos has retired, so Dana is the interim director of Office for Aging Services. The OFA is funded primarily from state and federal funds. We have approximately 21 different funding sources that we collect monies from. Of those, 18 of them are state and federal funding sources as of now for the 2025 year. That obviously could change throughout the year, depending on if we get offered any more grants or any other funding sources throughout the year. Right now it's at 18, and of those, half of them have a required local share match, which means that no matter what, we have to run at some portion with our expenses higher than revenues. So for us to make any of our claims, we have to have a local share matching a certain percentage of all of our service and or admin costs. In a perfect world, I've broken down some math. It would be 10.71% of all costs would be required, the local share. So, for example, if we had $1 million, we'd have to have at least 107,000 higher expenses and revenues to claim all of our funding sources. With discussions between ISOFA Fiscal, among others, and fiscal staff here, the recommendation is actually around 20 to 25%. And in previous years, we've been right around 23.83% on average for the 5 years previous to, or 5 years that have been finished up from 2019 to 2023. The current budget that we're proposing is sitting at 20.93. So we're at a very low end of that scale, but I think it's very workable, very reasonable. The main changes that we've made that you can see heading into the upcoming year is our federal revenues are decreasing by a significant amount. And the reasoning behind that is OFA had their own individual ARPA funding. Separate from the funding that the county receives, we had our own ARPA funds, and that was approximately $578,000 of last year's budget. So that is now sunsetting as of the end of the day today, actually, 9:30. So we have to reduce our expenses. So to offset that, we went and reviewed all of the correlating expenses related to those revenues and have made significant cuts into all of our contractuals that also include the percentage of local share that those revenues would have offset as well. So our expenses are being reduced at a similar rate to what we project to gain off of our revenues. When it comes to personnel, we lost 2 to the fiscal restructuring compared to last year. So 2 FTEs went to the finance department. We are also proposing to increase all of our employees to be working 40 hours a week. Currently, a majority of them are 35 hours with a handful of 37.5. To offset any expenses incurred during this change, we have reduced our FTEs by an additional 2.14. So with the reduction with FTEs, as well as increase into 40 hours, we still net out at slightly lower total personnel and benefit costs than we do from the previous year. overall, we feel that this is a very slimmed down, fair, efficient budget, and I think it's going to be very workable for 2025. So, any questions?
Sure. The workforce was okay with, and it was within the contracts to all go to 40 hours
Yes.
from
We
where
queried
they
the
were?
staff to see what their thoughts were on that, and I'm trying to think of how many actually went to 40 hours.
At the moment, we have, was it 23 individuals? There were 6 that said that at the moment, they would not be opting into it because they do have the option. We can move the whole department up. We cannot force them to work that many hours. At the moment, 6 of those individuals said that they want to remain at their current hourly rate. Out of those 6 individuals, 4 of them stated that it's just because they had not planned for it. They did not foresee any kind of changes like this expecting, so it would cause more life changes in their own personal life, and they would be more than welcome to accommodate for that in the future, obviously, because they'd like more hours, more money, simple stuff. And there was a couple of them that are perfectly content with where they're at. So a majority of them are in favor. I'd say 90%.
Well, it's good knowing at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's a way to just optimize the current employees that you have a little bit better, and it isn't, like you said, something that's mandated. They can have a choice, and also if it's a choice moving forward, they can always change their mind. So if someone goes to 40 hours, is it, they can go back also, correct, if life changes and they,
No, they can't.
so once they've chosen the 40,
The 40 hours is
Okay.
on the position, not the individual.
okay,
Yeah, so once they choose to go to 40, if they opt out at the moment, they stay at that rate. Once you go to 40, they are at 40
okay.
until they change position.
And since that position is now a 40-hour position, if someone new is hired.
Yep, all
they could
refills
be
will be at
hired
40 hours.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
And any current refills that we were looking for would be at 40 hours if it's approved.
Okay.
Gotcha. So do you have like the numbers on how much, does that save money? Does that actually saves FTEs, but it ultimately saves money too?
Yes, it does. I mean,
Do you have a sense what that is? Or-
well, if you just look at the overall personnel line, the overall personnel is being reduced by $41,326 in just straight salary costs, and $41,896 in your employee benefits.
Okay.
And as I mentioned before, that's all relative to the funding that we get for it, as 89.7% of all funding is pretty much covered by state or federal funding sources.
Gotcha, okay.
I just wanted to make another note, though, too, that with the staff that did remain at that 37.5 hours, since once any of those employees choose to leave the county, their refills will be at 40, you will see other increases in subsequent years that are tied to that 40-hour increase once those refills are completed and that takes place. So that's just something to keep in mind a little bit, too.
Sure.
That does contribute to the savings that you see.
And I would also add, just on the benefits side of things, so they are reducing 2 FTEs. And, I mean, you can think of it as maximizing benefits in a sense, so for the 2 FTEs that they no longer have, we're not paying health insurance costs for those 2 FTEs. So that's really a savings to us.
Okay.
So the 6 people that chose not to go to 40,
Mhm.
that is reflected in these numbers.
That is actually not reflected in the numbers.
Okay.
The numbers reflect every position at 100% filled to capacity. So our actual expenses may come down slightly lower than this.
Because you factored it in.
Yeah, we factored in max potential as if everyone opted in,
All right,
just to simplify things.
okay, yep. Anything else?
I have a couple of questions. I have a real general question.
Yes.
This is in regards to your expenses, and you indicate that you have a couple of line items where you're offering other contractual services, County of Allegheny, and other contractual Cattaraugus County.
All right, so
What
you
is
probably
that
want to know
grant?
what that is.
Yes.
That is our SHINE grant. We collaborated with the counties of Cattaraugus and Allegheny to, instead of all of us individually applying for the grant, it was a collaboration where it was agreed upon that Chautauqua County would take on the grant reporting and the grant revenues side of everything that goes into it. With the collaboration of Allegheny and Cattaraugus County, we're basically all getting 1/3 of all the revenues from that grant. However, what we're doing is we're being invoiced for any of the expenses for any of the other counties. So we're paying off their expense portion of this grant, and any federal funding that they would get is almost like passing through us to those counties. So that's what those contractual agreements are about.
Okay, so Chautauqua County bears the overhead for managing that grant
Yes.
with no compensation from the other counties.
There's compensation built into the grant, is there
Yes.
not?
Okay.
The compensation is built into the portion of the grant that we receive.
Okay, and is there any local share involved in this grant?
That is a 0% local share.
I like the way you talk. Now, I have a more higher level question, and I'm looking at your summary for Office for the Aging, and it shows that your contractual expense for 24 in the budget, I'm looking at the adopted budget of $3,575,000. You're projecting it's going down this year from that $3,575,000 to $1,958,000, and it's going up next year to $3,114,000. So why is it going up so much from what you're projecting this year?
The projections may be slightly skewed, and the reasoning for that is because we have been cleaning up some claims from the 22 fiscal year. And there were claims that have been filed, that were on file with the state. There was just certain documentation or certain other areas that they needed, that the state needed, so that they could pay off those claims. Now, in the whole process of that, they did put a stop on us of making any claims for the current year until we got at least the 2022 year cleared up, because the way that the funding works, if there's any, like for example, any federal funding, if we don't use up our federal funding, any amount that is left over is carried over to the next fiscal year. So currently we do have all of the 21, 22, or 22 fiscal year claims all approved. They've moving on to the next step with the 23, 24 claims, which they have on file. We've done a comparison as to what they've paid off. They just need a couple of budget modifications on the state end that match our records, and then once those get through, then all of those claims will be processed, which will be in a short period of time. We've been having daily conversations with the state on the best approach as to get caught up on all of this, and once that is completed, then all the claims for the the current 24 year will go in there, and the numbers are going to regulate themselves because it's not reflecting any of the revenues that are currently listed in there, and obviously any offsetting expenses that may correlate to that.
Interesting discussion. What I would think is that that would be impacting your projection of revenue for this year, where your projection for revenue is the same as budget. And yet what I pointed out is that you're projecting your expenses to be much lower than budget.
And that one I don't have as much of a clear answer. I would have to look into exactly what expenses are in there and what has been recorded and why it is at a lower level.
Yeah, which would then, obviously for our purpose today, would question whether the 2025 budget as projected is correct. if you get my drift.
Oh, I can understand that.
Yep.
Yes.
So could you investigate that and get that answer back to the committee?
Oh, definitely.
Great. Thank you.
And as it pertains to any of the contractual expenses for the 2025 year, we did a line-by-line item with all of the contractors and based that off of the most recent invoice and the most recent year's actual expenses to get the numbers that we did for the 2025 year.
Well, if your projection number is inaccurate, then I would have much more confidence in your 2025 tentative budget, but
Understandable.
that's what I'm looking for.
Well, it's a big variance, so I agree, it's, you know, it's $1.6 million of difference there that from what your budgeted amount and what is projected, so that's a big gap. And we're hope that you're spending it because it's services that are provided to our aging population.
Oh,
that
and
really need it.
And you can ask these ladies. I've been telling people to spend as you can because with all the fundings getting caught up from the 2022 fiscal year with the carryover, we have excess funds that are readily to be, you know.
Used for services.
Good.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Bob, what happened to all your partners up with it?
Yeah. Seems pretty.
They believed you.
They took it literally. Let me see what my projected amount is on here. I would like to know where that number came from.
Well, let's go.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
You probably have time to go find it and come back.
Yeah, you can-
This budget worksheet days ago to use for my notes, and I put the projected column in there just so I could see what projected is against all the expenses. And I've got 3.372 million on mine.
Oh, we have 1.9.
I know.
That, yeah. There you go.
yeah, 23 minutes. 22 minutes.
Well, if you guys want to go with this, this is a copy of the projected budget worksheet that created 9/27. And I included the projected amount, which calculates the same spot within our new little system. And this is the column right here. Column right. And off of this one, it's got a 3.372, 333, which does not match.
Yeah,
That's why it took me off guard.
I like that number better, but we need to understand what happened.
Yeah, I want to.
Yep.
I emailed him earlier, but I didn't get anything.
No, no problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. 20 minutes?
That's my goal, is to always catch you off guard a little bit. Yeah.
So the explanation will come in audit and, later in the budget, right?
What's this?
In audit and control, or no? When will the
I
explanation?
asked them to get an explanation back to the committee.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Okay, Kitty's passing out a little bit more explanation, I guess, on safety net, and she wants to address that. If we got a little bit of time, we'll do that right now. While we're waiting for public health people.
You can send her an email.
Introduce yourselves, please.
Kitty Crow, Director of Finance.
Diana Sauer, Deputy Director of Finance.
So based on the discussion this morning, we put together some just historical data for your information on safety net. Just to reiterate, you know, this is a volatile area. So as you can see by the chart, it goes up and down, and it is very hard to project. But just to kind of maybe give you a little bit more assurance on the 2025 budget, or I don't know if you want to say assurance, but if you look at the bottom left there, we put in a 5-year average cost and a 15-year average cost. So if you compare those averages with what is being budgeted for 2025, it's, consistent with, averages over the years. Safety net also will go up and down, based on how the economy is doing. So, when, in times when the economy isn't doing so well, we start to see that safety net costs creep up, and then as things improve, it kind of comes back down. So, I don't like to use the word hope with budgeting, but I think it's, somewhat realistic to think that, during next year, the economy will continue to improve, but I don't think it's gonna get worse necessarily from what we've been seeing the last, year or so. Regard to safety net, to figure out where that one's coming from.
Somebody kicking that was me. I kicked the
I don't,
thing.
yeah, I don't know if it's, so I just wanted to give you that history, also just to, talk about, I think you already, Pierre brought up the point too about, with a line item that is so volatile, increasing the budget to current trends, you have to balance that with, kind of not taxing too much. Can we weather the storm, so to speak, if we do end up having it come in over budget? If we were in a position where we were many years ago, where we had a, very small fund balance, I would have shied away from trying to not increase this more, because we couldn't take the chance that it would come in, at a lower amount. So that's just some of the rationale, because we did have these discussions, with the department as we were developing the tentative budget and the county executive, and so that's how we landed on the number that we included in the budget. It is going up $500,000, so, it's not that we haven't budgeted some increase, but, we didn't budget it up to the full trend as it is today. So, just kinda wanted to give you a little bit more context there and how we came down to what we planned for in the budget.
Thank you. And you also couldn't go above the tax levy cap or something?
Yes, so our goal in developing the tentative budget was not to exceed the tax cap. The tax cap can be exceeded. It takes a vote of the legislature to exceed the tax cap. But since the tax cap has been implemented, there was only 1 year that the county did vote to exceed and go over the tax cap, and that was 2021 budget. Obviously during COVID, everything was a lot less certainty. But other than that, I haven't seen it be the will of the legislature to exceed the tax cap, so.
Are there penalties associated with exceeding?
In one respect there is, so the Raise the Age program, so some of that funding is at jeopardy if we exceed the tax cap, and that's for any county.
Okay.
They do have a waiver process that in 2021, when we did go over the tax cap, we, applied for that waiver, and we ultimately did receive it. But other than that, there's no consequence. It's just, I think, the most of it is, perception, or, like I said, if we were in a worse off financial position, there's been times I've advocated for the tax cap to be exceeded, especially if you're adding a new incremental expense that we know we're gonna have ongoing. It would make sense to raise taxes for it, because that's gonna be an expense every year, but we really haven't had that type of thing in a while.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing
Yep.
this.
And I think too, Diana and her team are gonna be looking again at the projections for the 60/10
60/10 projections.
revenue.
2024 projections that you were questioning. It's admin.
Is it?
Admin.
Yeah.
Yeah, the admin, because we think the projections might be a little low. So they're gonna take another look at that and then get back to the committee with any updates.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanna make sure everybody got, Jen's updated tab 32 prior to the meeting. She handed those out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So,
Yep.
everybody got those for public health?
That's where the state sued the opioid manufacturers, the pharmaceutical companies, and got a settlement, and then they divided it up by the counties. Maybe it was the federal government, the back.
I loved the day at times we had
Yeah.
a meeting here. Olivia, we vote for pizza here one of these winter nights.
In the winter,
It was good. It was really, it was
Yeah.
really good.
and it was economical.
Where was it from?
Crossroads.
Oh, I like
Tough to get off it, no, but.
I mean, who eats gas station pizza, but
I do.
It was good, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I like their stromboli. Yeah, well, that's like a stromboli, pizza, and they just fold it over.
Well, that was going
You're
on.
here all week.
I went to the dentist. I got two things.
Are they still kind of working this
You're
week?
tough, I'm not gonna give you.
There's,
He goes, I know what, he says, if you prescribe it, okay. Gotta go out west.
To overcome.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
Before you get to your shoe? Okay. Okay, we're back, and up next now is the Health Department, Public Health. Take it away.
All right,
And
so,
if you all can introduce
yeah,
yourself.
we'll do that. I'm Dr. Mike Falk, Chief Medical Officer.
Lacey Wilson, Public Health Director.
Blake Uhrig, Director of Administrative Services.
Diana Songer, Deputy Director of Finance for Human Services.
So I wanted to start off with just a broad overview, general summary of what we're looking at. We have some headwinds that we've had to manage for the 2025 budget, namely some increased expenses relative to other years. Those are coming in the way of increased expenses in mandated services. Also with increased payroll allocations for salary, benefit, and retirement, which I'm sure you've already heard about as we've moved forward. Additionally, decreasing revenue. Some grants that we have relied on for the last several years, 3 of them specifically, which you'll hear about when we get into the meat of the different divisions. But I think that we've been able to manage those headwinds the best that we possibly can in a responsible way. And so that just kind of, I think, sets us up a little bit. I don't know the sequence that you guys prefer, but I thought we would discuss first our FTE report. We are looking at a total increase of 3.6 FTEs. However, 6.27 of those are fully funded, and mandated due to our lead rental registry. We can go line by line here for the coroner's office. That 0.06 increase is really a change in payroll allocation for basically for my time, decreasing some of my time in public health admin and increasing it to coroner work. The jail clinic, you'll realize that we've combined our jail clinic budget with our medication-assisted treatment. We've reduced some positions, specifically in our medication-assisted treatment in the 2025 budget, which reduced the total FTEs to 2.2. In public health admin, reduction of 3.38, so those are some of the payroll allocations that I've alluded to, myself moving from public health admin to other, so really a net zero overall. 1 nurse moving from public health admin into the jail where she's been working, and a nursing RNS 4 from public health admin to 30% jail with that jail oversight. The education for children with special health care needs, increase in 0.1, that's just a change in payroll allocation, again, balancing out other departments. And early intervention, increased in 2.75 FTEs, that is 1 basically case manager position. We had a long discussion recently about our increased demand in early intervention. We do, our early intervention folks are working with far more cases than the state average or the state preference. And we need a case manager to offload some of that. That role is partially funded. And then again, a change in payroll allocation. So we took one of our supervisors of the program, in fact, our manager, some of that salary and benefits from public health admin to early intervention, just to really try to clean it up the best we can. Really have a more accurate reflection of where individuals are spending their time and what divisions, and being more responsible in doing so. So again, 6 funded positions from the state, but only a net increase of 3.6 FTEs. So
Are these 6 new positions that are funded or
that's
existing?
six new positions that are for the lead rental registry.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Those are funded, salary, fringe benefits, that all funded by the state. And we'll get into those details here in just a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. I have other questions related to that, but I'll hold them. How many, currently where are you at for full-time? You have, even this year, you have 76.85? Where are you at with, how many people do you have right now?
So unfilled positions, I didn't bring the most recent vacancy report.
We're almost fully staffed.
Okay.
There may be a few unfilled positions
Can you
that I can think of.
tell us at some point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we could probably figure it out by the end of, we just need Kathy to email Marcy for us, or Jessica. Just see if Marcy can send us the most recent vacancy report.
Mhm.
We can get that.
Okay.
by the
And-
end of-
Yeah, that'd be great, because some of them are off.
Oh, boy. Let's see. So it looks like right now we have, 1, 2, 3, 5 refills.
What does that mean?
Those are actively, we're in the active process with HR to have those
Oh,
posted.
okay,
and-
so they're coming in,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so there's an LPN, there's at least 2 or 3 of them. 2 of them are RNs for the jail. We have a recent vacancy of a position, public health educator.
We actually just got word this morning that that's been filled.
Well, and part of my, in asking that number is years of sitting in this position and asking that question. That number's varied, and that's actually the smallest that I've heard it, which is good, because it means that recruitment and retention is working. The work that has been done in years past to try to do that is working, and it just in sense, the coverage of the service that we're trying to provide is done better.
Yeah.
And our vacancy savings, we're realizing, we'd rather not.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
I think there's even, you were up to almost 20 people missing at some point,
Yes.
25. So that's
Mhm.
a lot of work done to.
It is,
control
and
that.
really, Mr. Pavlik, we have to credit so much so the division directors, who are doing a wonderful job with the culture of each of their divisions and really working on, the staff development there and just creating a department that people want to be a part of. We're really proud of that. I think one of the, major wins that we've experienced is, we are in the final stages of finally bringing on a public health engineer. For the first time in a couple of years. It has been a labor of love to get this, really integrated into the department again. We're really confident about the person who's coming in, and it really is a success of the department and the staff and the team leaders. They do an excellent job.
Good.
So to answer the question, specifically, it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 positions.
8 positions are unfilled.
Unfilled, but, several of them are soon to be filled. Yep. And then we have 3 positions that were budgeted in 2024 that we've elected to not fill at this point in time. 2 of them specifically, one's an LPN for the MAT program, and one is the MAT coordinator. We're not filling those 2 positions for 2025.
In the budget, 2 of these areas both got grade reallocations, right? Not 2 of those positions, 2 sub-departments, like at the
Yeah.
jail and the early intervention.
Right.
And this is included, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it-
Yeah, we made sure to be very thoughtful in the planning for 2025 to include that. Be proactive in our plan. Yeah.
Way to go.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks, Jess.
By the way, we brought our division directors with us today in the event there's additional questions, so thank you for making the time. Any other questions about the FTE report? And if it's okay to move forward with the individual divisions?
Yep.
Starting off with coroner program. We've made a real effort, as promised, to try to start thinking about reducing contracted costs. Recall in 2024, we did budget for the coroner supervisor position, although, that position was filled partway through the year. We're actively working with Tony Shuckles, our coroner supervisor, who's in a management position. He's away out of town this week, otherwise he would be with us. But we're proposing a reduction of $19,000 in contracted costs. Those are medical examiner's fees, those are transportation costs, with our coroner supervisor. Part of the reason why I have elected to increase my allocation of my time to the coroner program is that there's going to be some additional attention, some additional training. For example, all of our coroners are, hopefully moving into this year and into next year, will be doing some of our own blood draws to try to keep some of our decedents local as opposed to sending them to the medical examiner's office. We still will need decedents to go to the medical examiner's office. There's no doubt about that, but we hope to reduce some of those costs. We do have the coroner vehicle coming sometime by the end of this year. Hopefully, I think bids were due this last year. We will hopefully realize some transportation savings as well. So really, the increase to the budget, the local share, we do have a little bit of revenue for the coroner program, estimated at $5,100, and that's basically, we work with the state to report drug overdose cases, and if the state reimburses us if we give them the data, basically.
But that
Unfortunately-
revenue's gone in '25.
What,
So
it shouldn't be.
is it the OD map process? So there are some things changing at the state, and so it may have probably just been difficult
yeah, I see
for
that,
you all
yeah.
too.
So I see the 50, but I see the 5,100 and
Unless it's a-
24 projections.
Unless it's an
Nothing.
unknown. I'd have to check on that.
Well, yeah, and you
It
had
may be something there that,
adopted budget in '24 is 0 also.
yeah, it may be, I can't remember what we had talked about, but I thought that revenue was there, so we're gonna have to check on that. Either way, it's not a lot of money,
No,
but every little bit helps.
yeah.
So really, the increase to the budget, really has to do with, increases in payroll allocation. And, we did have a little bit, maybe a little bit of IT savings for equipment, but,
Any
and that
questions?
really shouldn't necessarily change year to year for the most part, so.
I do, sure.
Yeah.
No, you just said that shouldn't change from year to year, but my question is about a change. Do you see your time being needed there as much, or do you think that you can shift that back at a later year?
I think it all depends on, being that, my time's really split between public health admin, coroner program, jail medical, and EMS. Jail medical is getting busier and busier. The census is going up over the past 30 days, so there's more time being spent there. It's a little bit of a moving target. And we
Understood.
try to estimate the best we can year to year, so I suppose those could change. I wouldn't necessarily anticipate more time in the future going to the coroner program. And I can't remember the certain percentages necessarily, but there are, a lot of it just depends on the demands.
Sure, no, and I, in some departments, it's minimal of a shift, but in this particular one, your percentage of going extra in this is reflected more so in this smaller department, so.
Yep. Any other questions about coroner program?
We don't have a medical examiner in Chautauqua County, or do we?
We do not.
Okay, you have to go to.
Yeah, we are a coroner county as opposed to a medical examiner county. Very few counties have medical examiners. Erie County and Buffalo is one of them, Monroe County and Rochester is one of them. The bigger counties typically have a medical examiner.
Okay, thank you.
We could have a medical examiner if we wanted,
Mm.
but they're hard to come by. There's a national shortage of them, and when you look at our, roughly $300,000 a year, we pay the medical examiner's office for our service.
That's how much you pay for their
Yeah,
services.
Roughly,
Interesting.
yeah, roughly, yeah. So we could employ one, but that means they would have to be here and available every single day, 24/7. No weekends, no holidays off, so, yeah. Probably more cost effective to have the contract and send our decedents to Buffalo.
We could charge for the service. The revenue, you can, instead of having.
Yeah, you
zero
could,
revenue.
you could work with adjacent counties, you could do that, but, hey, we'd be open to it if we found a willing
More
doc to
schooling
do
for
it.
you.
Right,
Sorry.
yeah, right, yeah, that's right. So just to let you know, a medical examiner is a physician who specializes in pathology with extra fellowship training in forensic pathology.
Okay.
So their training is approximately roughly 5 years post-medical school, just to do that. So they're highly specialized individuals, yeah. Any other questions about coroner? Moving into jail, which again also includes a medication-assisted treatment program. It might be easier to look at the second page under MAT program first. Really, everything that was budgeted for the MAT program is rolled into jail clinic now. So those costs of roughly $1.1 million for the MAT program are being rolled into the jail budget. So one thing that we didn't talk about, maybe we'll save it for the end, is our local share summary. we can, I did want to hit that prior to, but there is, so the jail clinic, this proposed budget assumes that we have a contribution of opioid settlement funds of roughly $50,000 to cover expenses for the MAP program. We, 2 years ago, when we realized, I guess it was fall of 2022, when we realized that we had this mandate to accomplish, we had made the decision, the legislature made the decision to utilize opioid settlement funds to fund the MAP program, which was fine. Those monies and available, that revenue was there. 23 and 24. 25, we still have a balance available to fund the MAP program. We're proposing utilizing opioid settlement funds in the amount of $850,000 to do that. In 2026 and beyond, those monies will be less and less available to us. I can't recall the numbers, but roughly, I don't know if it's $250,000 a year or something like that after 2025. So we're thinking now about how we're gonna sort of phase the opioid settlement funds out to fund the MAP program. Obviously, there's a lot of other important work that needs to be done. And some of that, you all will be hearing about some of those initiatives. I know a couple, last month you heard about some of the strategic planning as far as the battle that Steve Kilburn presented to you. And so there will be a phase out of those funds over time, but this year we're proposing to utilize $850,000 of that to continue that funding for 2025.
Dr. Falk, on that point, I don't see where that shows up in your budget.
Well, when we were looking at that today, I think.
I can answer that question.
Yes, please, thank you.
The comptroller requires the recognition of the revenue to be in a different revenue account, which is under the miscellaneous, which I'll go over tomorrow, but on the first page of their summary just shows you that it'll be offset in another department, so you'll see that revenue in 1310-9999.
And I don't see that offset in their budget.
It won't be in the health department budget, it'll be in department 1310-9999 is where the revenue will be.
Where the revenue is.
Correct.
Where's the offset to the health department budget?
It doesn't get reflected in the health department, so it would reflect as an increase.
So the health department shows an increase
Local
because of
share.
the expenses are there.
Correct.
But the revenue to offset those expenses is not there.
Correct.
Well,
It's
this
the
sounds like a budgeting nightmare.
Yes, it was.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, we know where the revenue is. You'll see the increase in the other revenue account. We worked together to understand. So I knew how much revenue to include in the miscellaneous department based on what they were planning to need for Matt.
And 3 years from now, will anybody remember this?
Yes, I will. But also, as you may recall, just, from the last 2 years in budgeting for the MAT expenses, that did become a local share cost when we had to, add it. We did have the settlement fund, so we, the last 2 years have used the settlement funds to offset the full local share cost for that. But we've reduced that from last year by $250,000 and plan to do that each of the next 2 years until there's, zero local share dollars supporting MAT. We didn't want to try and do it all in 1 year, so we have a plan to taper that down and then shift the opioid settlement funds to the other approved uses for those funds.
Okay.
What
A lot
percent?
going on behind the curtain here.
What percentage of the opioid funds is being used for the jail mat?
So the settlement funds will be coming in for like the next 30 years. So, we do have a schedule based on each of the settlements. Some of the, settlement agreements, included one-time payments. Some of the settlement agreements include like, clauses where if they pay sooner, then they don't have to pay as much in total. So it does fluctuate a little bit, but, to date, we haven't expended all of the funds that we've received. So, any that are not expended to date just get put into a reserve account because it can only be spent on, certain things.
So it's like there's this lump sum and it's being used
At-
and then
yeah,
there'll still be some.
We kind of currently
yeah.
have an accumulated amount
Yeah.
that we haven't utilized all of it yet because one, the MAT expenses haven't come in as high as what we expected initially because it was a new program and it was hard to estimate. So those funds have they've been reserved for, and so we did work out, a tentative spending model over the next few years, because we've gotten some one-time payments, and after those one-time payments are expended by 2028 will be to our, roughly just a recurring amount per year. And so we're trying to taper down to that amount, and then we will just have a more, less
Concrete.
volatile budget, just be an even amount per year. We'll know what we're gonna get, and we'll know what we'll budget and expense by 2028, roughly.
And it's anticipated that there'll be less of the opioid settlement monies going towards the MAT program?
Yes, that is our,
That's the
we're
ultimate.
proposing that we taper that off so that it would go toward other programming, that the opioid settlement funds they can talk to
Yeah.
those details, but yeah, so that we can, cause Matt will go on.
Right.
So,
We are hoping perhaps for some additional revenue from the state to cover MAP program. So OASIS specifically has asked us for a lot of information about our budget for the MAP program. And we're confident I'm not sure that they would cover all of it, but I'm confident they'll at least elect to decide to give us something to help offset some of the costs, so.
A question, sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
A question I have, why are we rolling the MAP program budget line into the jail clinic budget line?
Well, partly because, I thought it was cleaner, to be honest. I mean, we don't, we treat all these diseases, right? But it's all just kind of one clinic. And so the way we've structured our jail clinic, our MAT program really isn't a different program. Everybody's kind of doing the work. We had to increase staffing because of the extra demands, but they're all kind of sharing in the work to a certain extent. A couple people are focusing a lot of their efforts on medication-assisted treatment. But it's really, it's really one specific disease that we're kind of separating out in a different budget line. It kind of, to me, it just didn't make sense. It just made more sense to just put it all into one. It's all one kind of division, and we treat it as such.
I'm just kind of reminiscing, but did we originally set that up so that way we could track the program better?
Yes.
And is it all right? And that, at the time, was a choice by the legislature?
I don't
We
think
wanted
so.
to have
I
it
don't think it
separated so
was.
we still have a project account so that those costs can be reported on at any time. So it's done with project accounting. So, and so as the expenses come in, they record it to the project account so we can, because we do want to continue to monitor the expenses, so we do have a way to do that.
Right. So are we okay with the new transition? Yeah, at the time it was specific and we wanted it, this way, and that's why it was that way, is we wanted to be able to track that and have its own category because it was a new program and also it was such an unknown at the time. So the different this division was made so that way we knew exactly what it was. But if everyone else is all right with it, going away from it, then I would be too. And as long as we can still track it, so.
I'm gonna go back up to the top of the jail clinic budget. But before that, I wanna pause and go back to our local share summary, as I wanted to talk about that initially before we got into individual divisions. So we're looking at an increase in local share of $335,000, which is an increase of 4%. That is without the contribution of the $862,000 from the opioid settlement funds. If we add in the $862,000 for the opioid settlement funds to fund the MAP program, we're looking at a negative 6.2% or 6.2% reduction of local share.
So, we have a new version.
Yeah.
It's wrong?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. There's an updated version. This was the one not here, sorry.
This is the updated version.
Local share is now 1.5.
Okay, that is a big difference.
It is a big difference.
Yeah. It was a formula error on what was printed.
I see, okay. All right. So actual change for this year with the opioid settlement funds, an increase of 8.6% local share. You know, when we came in, you know, myself in 2022, and worked on the 2024 budget during 2023. Last year, we realized a reduction of local share of 15%. So we're still, you know, coming into the health department as a standalone, separate health department, after the restructuring of the programs. There was a lot of thought, a lot of planning, a lot of strategic planning, a lot of shifting of priorities and how we were operating and how we were doing business. And Lacey was a great help when she came on board as deputy director in, what was that, middle of '23? And really looking at our priorities as a department. So I still like to, emphasize the fact that we're still, showing a reduction of 8% in local share over the last 2 years, 24 and 25 budget. And we'll go through, again, specific divisions and understand why that local share has increased for 2025. And some of those, due to some of those headwinds that we had discussed.
Can I back up a question
Yeah.
a minute? Back to the jail clinic. You said Oasis wanted budget information?
Well, it was more of, they wanted an idea of what we were spending for our MAP program, what it was costing us. They're doing a county-to-county comparison to kind of figure out how much they're gonna have to come up with, or, how much they're willing to contribute to the expenses. And so they wanted to know from each individual county what the cost of medications were, the staffing, et cetera, et cetera.
So it's purely our costs.
Yeah, right. In hopes that they'll help us out.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So back up to the top for jail clinic. Yep, sorry.
Back
Yeah.
on the medical, the MAP program, does
Yeah.
this include the sheriff's expense in this as well? Because the sheriff has expense in helping maintain and monitor the program.
This does not reflect any of the correctional staff that are dedicated to escorting individuals or anything like that. This is strictly medical personnel only.
Okay.
So this does not reflect any of
Is that reflected in the sheriff's budget? Okay. Thank you.
Just, in the total census, I looked up the census, 169, which it sounds like it's more now, because you said there were more. And 46 of the, I don't want to say prisoners, but
Incarcerated individuals.
incarcerated individuals are federal prisoner, or incarcerated individual. They also are eligible for are they also eligible for the MAP program?
They are, it's a little bit of a tricky situation because, they are, to a certain extent. The feds do not pay for, generally do not pay for medications, for medication-assisted treatment. So it's a challenge. The medications are not cheap. But we work with each individual the best we can to come up with a plan. So all of our individuals are eligible for our substance abuse response, or substance abuse and recovery program within the jail. And some of that also includes counseling and things like that. Not only, so medication-assisted treatment is a part of the overall program. Also inclusive in there is peer support and reentry coordination and things like that. That's all part of the substance abuse
Sure.
recovery program within the jail. But the feds, unfortunately, give us, X number of dollars per week or per month for those housed, but they do not pay for treatment, especially the injectable forms, which we tend to prescribe more often for individuals. So the individual Sublocade injection for medication. There's a number of reasons why we look at that medication as being preferred. Number one is it just increases compliance with treatment. Most individuals who are getting that medication find success, tolerate it very well. They come out of the jail with 2 to 4 weeks of covered being medicated until we can get them an appointment somewhere. But it comes at a cost. I mean, that cost is, roughly $1,400, $1,500 per injection, per month. So it's not cheap. But the other big part of that is if you have 40 or 50 people on oral medications, it's almost impossible on a day-to-day basis with for security reasons, because every individual that's getting oral medications has to be escorted to a certain spot. It takes probably 20 minutes per session to get somebody medicated to help reduce diversion of these medications within the jail. So operationally, we tend to lean towards that medication. But every case, every patient, the care is individualized for every patient. So we don't have a hard and fast rule necessarily, but anyway.
Thank you.
So for personal services for the jail clinic, looking at difference from 24 to 25 of $118,000. That is the most of that is the MAT full-time employees, the FTEs rolled into the jail. Also with the increase in the jail nurse wages from 24 to 25. That would also include the percentage increase for payroll allocation as well. We have really took a hard look at our expenses in regards to pharmaceuticals and contracted costs for hospitalizations. We in 23, our actual expenses were $875,000. 24, we're looking at more like $720,000, and that's even with increased census. So I think we're really trying to take a thoughtful approach in regards to our expenses, working closely with the pharmacy, finding more cost-effective treatments or cost-effective options when we can. So we are proposing a reduction for 2025 of $200,000 for contracted costs within the jail, keeping in mind that we put this together over the last couple of months, and just over the last month, our jail census went up from 160, 165 up to over 200 incarcerated individuals. So again, it's a little bit of a moving target. I mean, if that number stays, that proposed reduction in contracted costs is at risk. But given what we've seen over the last couple of years, that's the number that we felt comfortable with. Employee benefits, again, increase for the personal just going along with the personal services above for the same reasons. And I think the rest of it we talked about.
Dr. Falk, if I can back you up.
Yep.
You were talking about contractual expenses for the jail clinic going down in 2025. What I'm looking at, they're going up in 2025 by $636,000.
Well, I guess what I had, that's for projected, right?
Budgeted.
We budgeted in '24, 1.1 million.
He's including the
Adopted
MAT,
budget.
the MAT program.
Oh, okay.
So you gotta look at it.
Now you gotta add
Oh,
in the
now we
back
got-
over.
Oh, the
Yeah.
MAT
Okay.
expenses, yeah.
Oh.
I should have clarified that. I know it's confusing, yeah.
I understand now. Thank you to Legislator Gustafson.
I did not take any finance classes in college, okay? They didn't include that in my medical school package. It's team effort here.
Yes.
Any questions about jail, clinic, parentheses, including math? And I think I'm going to turn it over to Lacey to discuss our public health division and the subdivisions
Within.
included, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Falk. I know you all probably are at a point of information overload from the entire day. So I thought it might be helpful to kind of paint a little bit of context landscape to digest the information with public health. In public health, we do everything from arthropods to, diseases and built environment and everything in between. So it can be a little disjointing to try to go through budgets sometimes and talk about that. So really the context that we're coming from, and Dr. Falk did a lovely job kind of laying the groundwork for me in regards to really what we're doing this year in the health department, and kind of what our goal has been over the last year and a half is to drill down to the infrastructure of what we really are funded to do from our state resources, and then look at that next to what our county needs in order to improve the health and wellness of the residents who live here. And what that means, of course, as you would know as county legislators, the state funding and the mandated programs that come down aren't always entirely reflective of what we need in our county. But in order to do that work well, we of course want to be very fiscally responsible with the money that we are provided. And so while I could come up with a number of creative programs and innovations as to things we'd love to try in our communities, really it would be irresponsible for us to take that approach. And so first, what we've done through this year is take the time to really understand the funding infrastructure that comes to us from the state, shore up that programming, really look at that staffing to make sure that that staffing is happening efficiently and well so that the majority of our money is going to services in the community. And then in the coming years, we'll look at doing the type of work that I love to do in terms of diversifying our funding, bringing in grants and services around very well-planned strategies to then grow out some additional wraparound services that are very unique to Chautauqua County. So that's really what you're seeing reflected in the budgets this year is kind of a resettling of the health department post-COVID. There was a lot of funding that came to us in the era of COVID, and that funding is not sustainable. And so instead of, and I was very pleased to see when I had come in, that when that COVID funding had come down to the departments, it wasn't used to balloon out staffing, which a lot of times that will happen, right? We have more work to do and we need more staffing. Instead, under the direction and leadership of Wendy and Jessica and Kathy and Dr. Falk, they did a wonderful job at utilizing the staffing that was already in place prior to COVID and providing them the resources that they would need to do the COVID work that was necessary in the community. And again, pass that money on really to services in the community. So that's kind of the overall landscape there. I'll take you through kind of department by department. Again, the way we look at things fiscally is a little different than how we actually consider ourselves kind of aligned within the department in terms of programming. So please stop me along the way if you have questions about other programming and services. So as Dr. Falk alluded to, and I'm sure you've heard multiple times, in each one of these accounts, of course, we're realizing just the increase in personnel and employee benefits across the board. And then some of the payroll allocation changes that Dr. Falk's already alluded to in terms of just kind of evening out kind of the shell game of the budget system there within our departments. The expense there that you see for the $27,000, that's actually a funded expense through an infrastructure grant that we get. So those are workspaces that this infrastructure grant is meant to provide kind of inter-office capital improvements for the public health workforce. There's an additional cost there that you'll see just wasn't budgeted in the prior fiscal year, just an oversight from the year before in terms of all of the changing of the guard and all of that. So it is actually specifically for our state aid application auditing agency, a very necessary and supportive service for the fiscal staff, because all of the funding that we get from the state and federal governments, but specifically from the state, comes with pages and pages of regulatory fiscal operations that must be followed to the T. So this is an agency that helps us do that work well without any repercussion from the state. In regards to in the public health admin budget, down to the revenue section, there is, again, you'll see kind of the biggest change in our budgets is some of the reduction in revenue. Specifically, some of our immunization income is lower than it has been in the last 3 or 4 years. Of course, that's because COVID ballooned that in the prior years. And then we've had a few other grants that have just kind of come to their expiration in terms of their life within the health department. Primarily, again, some of the COVID grants expiring there.
Can we go back up to the contractual and
Mm-hmm.
the projected increase in '24?
Mm-hmm.
Did you explain that? Or did I not?
So the projected increases in '24, you're saying?
Was, yeah, it went, budgeted was 454 and it went, projected, we're gonna do basically 1.4 for 939.
It's the infrastructure, right? No, that's not. It's the 700 with all the fellowship, 700,000.
Okay, yeah, so our, oh, yes, our fellowship programming. Actually, no, I want to be the
Which one was
fellowship
this,
program.
115?
Sorry, I'm less versed in the 24 because I wasn't really here, but.
The difference, the $28,000
What's
difference
projected?
between 24 and
No,
28.
the $939,000
Addition of the 700.
extra,
We were gonna
You-
spend 450, we spent 1.4.
394.
Was there a grant that you were a new grant that came into play this year that?
What was it? 715,000.
Yeah, so the two major grants that would have come to the health department in 2024 were the infrastructure grant and the, well, really the infrastructure grant. The fellows aren't a grant project, but. Oh, they were then. Okay, that's probably what it was. Okay. Yes, yes. So the fellowship grant, so this year, the iteration of the fellowship program is not a grant, but in years prior, they're saying that, yes, it was a grant, so that's most
And
likely
that
what
was
that
part
was.
of this federal aid increase? Down below in the revenue?
No. The federal aid decrease, you mean, or increase during those years? Yes. During that year. So the 2024 projected down there in the revenue under
Revenue,
the
yeah.
federal, yes, that would have come because it's the
That's-
grant originated at the CDC level, federal.
So that's
Mhm.
fellowship.
Fellowship, combination of fellowship and probably infrastructure.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, sorry, because I wasn't really here during that time. I don't have all that history.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay, so next is the environmental health account. So this is not news to you, because we've been here multiple times, and I know I've had the chance to talk with a number of you about the lead rental registry. So this is a mandated service from the state that has come down to us at the counties. But again, something that we're very excited about is that the initial phase of this program comes fully funded to us. And it comes with really a model work template, a workplate kind of template for us that basically requires us to choose one of the models that they have provided us. Staffing, in terms of staffing models and approach to how we will apply this rental registry in our community. And that's really what you're seeing there and kind of the expense categories there. It will be the hiring of those fully funded positions, and then also some of the equipment, of course, that will come along with us, doing this work, also funded through the state. And then in terms of revenue, again, you'll see some of the offsetting though down below in regards to, while we have the increase in revenue from the lead grant from the state for the rental registry, there are a couple of the projects that are expiring as well. Yeah.
You said initiate, the lead program is giving initial funding. So those positions are fully funded now.
Yes.
What is the duration of those being fully funded?
So is it a 5-year, yes, it's a 5-year work plan that they've given us so far with funding through the 5 years. Post 5 years, so again, the idea behind this work is that this is meant to jumpstart and provide guidance and technical assistance to the municipalities that, are the targeted municipalities, basically, that the state has identified. The idea being that once we do this work and the onus and the increases in the improvements in the housing stock have been made, that then we wouldn't need to continue this work long term beyond the initial phases of the initial kind of cleanup.
So in 5 years, you'll have all the lead remedied and
That's-
vacated out of the city.
That is the goal. That is the goal. It is a lofty one. Yeah, we have 5,000 plus properties just within the city of Jamestown to help remediate or to help the municipalities and other, other agencies within the jurisdiction to enforce this as well. But we are in a actually really great spot specifically within the city of Jamestown. If you're not familiar, they have also been developing a rental registry. So I think we're in a better spot probably than some other counties and municipalities across the state, but it is a big lift, absolutely.
You gotta have a time frame. You could set
Yeah.
it for 20 years and you wouldn't be motivated, so.
Right.
5 years,
Right.
you know.
And I think we've been really cautious of that as well, and so this is under Jessica's division. And one of the things we've talked a lot about is the full transparency with the staff that we're bringing on to this program as well, in regards to this is what this job entails. It is specifically a 5-year window here, and so, that's also something that we're not typically afforded with mandated programs through the state. Sometimes it's kind of open-ended, and then you're questioning, are we bringing these people on long-term? How do we find funding for them later down the road? But knowing that we have a timeline, what the funding is, we can be a little more transparent and upfront in our planning. Any other questions there?
You were hiring an engineer, is this for environmental scientists?
It is, yes. Yes, and that's just been a long-standing vacancy that we've had. Mhm.
While you guys think of any more questions for the
Did you find
4090, I just want a point of information that we found going back to 4010. The amended amount for the contractuals actually is $1,183,137. So that just kind of gives you, it makes more sense for the projected of 1.3 million for the contractuals. Just going back to your question, Marty.
Okay.
So,
And
that is for the fellowship
that
contractual
kind of
expenses.
balances out the
Yeah,
Yes,
increase in revenue.
exactly, yeah.
yeah, it looks a little,
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
more sense, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we can move on to education for children with special health care needs. So really, the increases that we see here, and if you've been here for any length of time in the legislature, from budget year to budget year, I'm sure you've heard about the preschool transportation costs. So this program is a program that must be provided within the counties, and transportation is required to be provided. To be quite frank, is a bit of a bear, the transportation is, because it is, not only flows through New York State Department of Health, but there is the component of New York State Ed here as well. So while these students may have the opportunity to attend a public school in a classroom, and there's varied sets of classrooms that they can attend, transportation is required. So typically for transportation for school students, that's handled through state ed and through the school districts. This is a separate subset of that, and is not required by state ed for the schools to provide. So that leaves then the safety net provider, the county, to provide that resource to the children in our community. This is a cost that continues to increase for a couple of different reasons we can talk about if you'd like and if you have questions. And that's really where you see the increase in this account.
So this is specifically the handicapped children. Next year, we don't pay for them, correct? So my understanding that there's that many every year, new individuals that are entering the preschool?
So it's an age range. What is that age range, Wendy?
3 to 4-year-olds.
Yeah, the 3 to,
Mostly 4-year-olds,
Yeah.
we tend to really push parents to move the 3-year-old out, because the transportation requirements are much stricter for a 3-year-old than a 4-year-old.
Sure, yeah.
right.
It's mostly 4.
Yeah, and so to your point, yes, it's basically a turnover from year to year, you know, students kind of embedded within this program and utilizing this system. And what we are seeing though is an increase in the number of children needing to utilize these services, unfortunately. And coupled with the fact that there are not a variety of transportation providers in our community. Oftentimes, there's only, you know, one bid that we get from an RFP. And I would say that's probably been true for the last how many years, Wendy? Last couple of years.
And who qualifies them as a handicapped individual in the sense that it's
It's based on an evaluation that would be done by either maybe a PTOT, it would be based on the need of the child. So it'd be, they could be either a child pulled out of a regular preschool classroom that we have nothing to do with, it gets PTOT and speech, which is your related services. Or it can be some of our children go to a specialized, classroom where we pay the tuition anywhere from $31,000 to $41,000 a year per child, plus the related service, plus the transportation, and that's usually like a 6-to-1 or 12-to-1 class.
So it's including, this is including also the education portion, not just only the transportation portion.
For specific classrooms, yeah. So if they're
Yes.
if they're integrated into a public school classroom, there's not necessarily the cost for the education services or the classroom services. But in terms of the professional services that they would be provided, yes, that would be an additional cost. And then the transportation for any of the children in the program is also a cost. And it is something I will say, this is a very hot topic amongst counties and health directors throughout the state, because it does put the onus directly onto the counties for this cost. So there is a lot of advocacy happening at the state level right now to kind of motivate DOH to have these conversations with state ed and really transfer, you know, some of the responsibility or all of the responsibility to the school districts who are already providing transportation to these locations every day.
And this is 100% local share.
There's a cost, yeah, there's,
We get 59.5%
Yeah.
back.
Okay.
And then, but the thing is, if you go over the cap on the transportation, a few years from now, we would end up getting a bill from the state.
yeah, so this is one of these two programs, and this is partly why they have their own accounting, and the finance team would be able to talk much more in depth about it. But actually, Ms. Parker had asked a related question in one of the committee meetings in terms of, well, how are these systems reimbursed? And each one of these is reimbursed slightly differently. So as Wendy was saying, basically what the state does for this program is we make a claim to them every month in regards to how many rides were provided. And then they will reimburse us back, but they set a cap amount. And then if you go over that cap amount, or even if you don't go over that cap amount, if they have determined based on a state averaged algorithm that you have spent too much on transportation in your community, they will ask you basically to reimburse the state. And they'll say you've basically overpaid. Which again, this is the dilemma for localities, because if you only have one provider, you are sort of at will of that provider's cost in so many ways. So there's just not a lot of competition to drive costs down.
I don't know if this is a pertinent question at all.
Mhm.
I don't want it to sound bad, but
Yeah.
is this both physically and mentally
Yes.
challenged?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Behavior is probably one of our number one problems in the school system right now.
Mhm.
Behavior. So,
Behavior, they're not ready, they're not toilet trained, some of them come into, aren't even able to feed themselves at 4 years, 3 or 4 years old.
And that's considered,
That would be considered a developmental disability. Mhm.
not being toilet trained?
It's a whole cascade. Right. And that's what Wendy was referring to earlier. There's kind of that clinical evaluation that's done. So it's typically a cascade of milestones that aren't met. And that's what Wendy's saying is we're seeing even to the extent now, which maybe we wouldn't have seen in such numbers 5 years ago, some of these basic developmental skills, children are showing up even lacking in some of the basic skills.
So then the children's environment would be calculated into that? I mean, home environment, yeah.
I mean, I think when you're looking at the preschool costs, these are the kids now that were probably not identified during COVID.
Right.
Because services did not take place. So you have early intervention, which is 0 to 3, and kids get identified, and hopefully by getting early services, they don't need it at preschool level or need less. But you had those COVID years where a number of kids were not evaluated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And would have been intervened, so our early intervention program, which is the next program that we'll talk about, is a program where children and families can be referred to us from ages 0 to 3. And so again, during COVID, when these systems aren't working the way that they were, children aren't being identified as early, so then we're not intervening as early. So if they are, to your point, left in environments or homes where that support is not or cannot be provided, then these children are delayed in all of these milestones. And then back to regular life, school happens now, they're 3 to 4, and are showing up in a school system not having had interaction or intervention before.
This isn't income-based or anything. It's across the board, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, our county is predominantly, managed Medicaid or Medicaid, but.
It's not a
It is
qualifier.
across
Right.
the board,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
everybody gets the service.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like any kid could be eligible for that,
Yes.
is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
any and all.
Any
Yeah.
and all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And to be clear, those recommendations are coming from that screening process. Some of those are from school or originated.
daycare.
Or are they originated from some county agency as well, or both?
So referrals can come from multiple sites, so physicians' offices, Head Start programs, preschool programs, private, families can provide this. But at some point along the way in that referral process, and then once they come to our system, there is a specific evaluation, a lengthy evaluation and assessment that occurs that basically helps the case managers to understand specifically what level of service they may need or may not need.
And that's done by county case managers.
For these programs, yes.
Early intervention.
Early intervention program, yeah. Yeah, so preschool, those are taking place with professional service providers outside of us, so the PTOT, yeah.
And that's part of the contractual cost. That
Yes.
contractual cost isn't solely, I guess
Correct.
look into detail to see what the breakdown of that is, but versus.
So Wendy, I always get this one wrong. So the state reimburses for which of the professional services for PTOT? And we're
Not
responsible,
total.
right? But
It's
which,
still at that 50, I think it's 56%.
right,
So there's a percentage that we get reimbursed for that.
yeah. And then for PTOT, early intervention, what's the difference between early intervention and preschool?
Early intervention is actually, so although it's the same contractors out there that we contract for all our preschool stuff, the state actually contracts for the early intervention contractors. So, they are actually paid and done through the state.
Mhm.
So the only one that we pay for.
Directly is
early
preschool.
intervention is our caseworkers. Same contractors, it's just the state took over the contracting part of that.
Any more questions on preschool? And we can revisit as we talk, or, yeah, Mr. Proctor, if you have additional questions, I'm happy to answer.
No, I'm trying to process it. There might be additional questions.
Okay, all right, we can come back. So lastly, on my side of things is the early intervention program. So again, this is something that you would have just recently heard about in the committee meetings. We came, and so I won't belabor that too much in terms of the context of that program. But the additional expenses here that, again, we talked about at length in the committee meetings, the increased caseload that we're experiencing. And so we have done our best to kind of get out ahead of that. And so some of the other increased costs that you'll see are around the personnel. So that was, again, adding that additional case manager position that we had talked about to help offset the hefty caseloads. And then the reallocation in the salary grade that you all just sat with us on this last week to get them up. So as we had said in those meetings, we had kind of projected and forecasted that and added that to the budget so that you could see a clearer picture of that moving forward into 2025.
So when you came in, we were talking about those positions. One of the things I believe, I'm just going by memory, was that it was gonna cost $29,000. And is this other amount, the funding, the rest of the funding, like here where you talk about additionally added, and budgeted grade increase from 12 to 18, and it says, 181,786 increase. Of that, really only the increase to the grades was 29,000
Yes.
to the local share.
Yes,
Okay,
for 2025.
just confirming. Thank you.
Anything else? Any questions?
I have a public health question not related to the early intervention.
Okay, we love public health questions.
Well, I guess health department. I'll
Oh,
rephrase.
okay, all
It was
right.
back to Dr. Falk. So the coroners program, with the new equipment coming in and have you anticipated any additional expense for maintenance or repairs or anything to that nature with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had budgeted in there, for vehicle expenses.
Okay.
I don't know that we budgeted in for 2025 any maintenance on the more trailer per se, however.
Okay.
Really not even knowing what those maintenance costs would be year to year. I think they would be minimal. It's not gonna get a lot of mileage, tires maybe once every 5 years, something
Yeah.
like that.
I suppose just, additional expense even with the truck, so you do have some expense in there for the truck.
Yeah,
But, yeah, and the trailer, I suppose, just I'm assuming it's coming with it, you'll have to insure it and things of that nature. I suppose you probably have some of that expense covered. I don't know what insurance is on something like that either, I
yeah,
guess.
I'd have to talk to the fleet manager in regards to the insurance part of it. I don't know. I don't have a full understanding how we insure our fleet. I don't know if it's, I'm not sure how we as a county manage that fleet expense. I'm not sure. for
Well, and the insurance might be a little different on something like that because it's something that is mobile, but it's also becomes a place of work.
Mhm.
And there's a liability aspect of this storage of whatever's inside of there. So I just was curious and if some of that was included in the budget or not, and that's all. It just was in the back of my mind,
Mhm.
so.
I can help answer. So, yeah, so any of our liability insurance is comes through our CS fund, which we'll review tomorrow, and, any equipment that any county department has, they get an allocation of the premium for that equipment in their budget.
Do you know if you added some for the coroner's trailer?
I don't know if that specifically is, but like things come on and off the schedule, throughout the year, every year. I mean, every time we purchase any type of new equipment, it comes on, or if something is disposed of, it goes off. We probably did not specifically have that information available, but it will get, become part of our cost, the insurance for that.
For the medical examiners and coroners budget, the insurance cost went up by 81%, and that's a whole $112 increase,
That's for the truck, probably.
probably for the truck. And your question about maintenance of the vehicle, the cost for gasoline, which is a new addition to the budget, is $12,000.
Sure.
So,
You know, and I assume that was in there probably for the truck.
yes.
Because it kind of makes sense, but, you know, and I know the trailer was probably, well, it wasn't approved at the time you were making the budget, you know, so, and that is kind of a unique piece of equipment in the sense of, you know, I don't know what it would cost to insure.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's an expense, that's all.
So the way we do the liability insurance budget is we take from our premiums that we paid this year, and based on that premium is based on a list of equipment that we currently own. And then we assume a % increase, on our policy for the next year. So there's no way of doing it by individual piece of equipment that we are expecting for the, 12 or more months out. If it's something material, I can ask Dennis if he can get an estimate of if it will be something material that we might want to consider amending the budget for.
Just a general question, when we had a trailer, it's got a life expectancy, do we then add something into our capital reserve for equipment to replace that trailer?
No, we don't have a reserve for equipment replacements, yeah. So that's just would be just like any other vehicle or a heavy piece of equipment would come through, the annual capital budget request and would be considered at that time.
Doc's gonna take real good care of that thing, it's gonna last 25 years.
Listen, I have, 5 kids, the youngest is 4, oldest is in college. I'm not retiring until I'm about 80 years old, so. So that thing's with us for at least 30 years, okay? We'll take real good care of it, yep.
Okay. That's it? Right? Anything else? For public health people? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
See the gasoline.
You don't have any others though, do you?
I'll see you Thursday, maybe on the other side.
Yeah. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending, and that's it for our Human Services budget session.
Nice.
Mar-